Okay, so Destruction Warlock. I have played from 61 to 65, having reset the talents. So I'm going to do a part one, part two again. The um, last few things I did that went over talents, I think, were more just as I leveled. So the first part, this part will be kind of a simplified overview, and then the second part will be me actually resetting the talents. So I feel like I've played Warlock enough in the past that I can give some like first impression thoughts on some talents. Um, as you'll hear me say in the second part where I reset the talents, the destruction, um, the Warlock and destruction talents might be some of the better talents in the game right now, at least of what I've seen. So you have a lot of choice in what you want to do, kind of how you want to set it up, what kind of a build you want to do. Um, I wanted to do something that was more simplified um, because there's always been a few things I just never used on destruction for some reason. Each spec of Warlock is probably more different than some other classes in the game, even when it comes to like the baseline abilities. So there were specs that I used more of their abilities than, less of destruction. So just kind of wanted to do away with things that I knew I wasn't really going to use or that were more kind of situational. Um, and so I did mostly dungeons. I've done some things out in the world, but have done mostly dungeons, time walking, and then Dragonflight dungeons. So, um, first, I'm going to focus on a few abilities. So, um, first, I wanted to mention two passives, though. So, for your soul shards, um, which is your resource as destruction. There are a couple few things that are worth taking. So first off, Inferno, which gives Rain of Fire a chance to generate a soul shard, I would definitely say is worth it because you will use Ring of Fire quite a bit. And when I've been camping um, world bosses, trying to farm mounts here this week after the reset, Um, I was able just to continuously spam Ring of Fire because it just keeps regenerating soul shards. So that has not been a problem at all. So Inferno, I would definitely say, is worth taking. And then there was something else. Let me look here and see. So Incinerate now generates 100% additional soul shard fragments. So they're kind of like little meters that kind of fill up. So you won't sometimes you'll get a full one. Sometimes it'll like be about 2/3 the way there. So that I would also say is definitely worth. Diabolic Embers is worth taking. And let me see here. Uh, yeah. So Ritual of Ruin. Um, so for every 10 soul shards spent, which you have 5, so you can get to 10 pretty easily. Um, Making your next Chaos Bolt or Rain of Fire consume no soul shards. and have its cast time reduced by 50%. So that is also pretty good. And then Avatar of Destruction summons a Blasphemy, which kind of looks like your Infernal for a short duration. This actually procs quite a bit. Um, again, when I was spamming Ring of Fire, um, doing my mount farm, it triggered a few different times. So I was actually quite impressed with that. Um, and then the second thing, and then of course you have Soul Conduct, which has been in one form or the other has been a Warlock passive for quite a while. So every soul shard you spend has a 10% chance to be refunded. So you should always have about a minimum of 3 at any given time. From what I can tell, the way everything seems to be working right now. And then the other passive that I wanted to mention was Mayhem, which automatically has a chance to apply Havoc. So this worked a lot better than I thought it was going to. Doesn't trigger all the time, so that would be the one difference between actually having Havoc and using kind of the passive version of it with Mayhem is you decide when to trigger it with if you actually take Havoc. Otherwise, it's just kind of a random chance. However, when it said 35%, percentages oftentimes on passives aren't um, completely descriptive in how they'll react in practice. So I was pleasantly surprised. This triggered enough that I noticed it, and enough that um, it was in a beneficial situation. So where there was at least like 2, 3, it wasn't just like, oh, you were fighting. And even during boss fights, sometimes it was a boss fight and then there was a mob that would spawn. Sometimes I noticed my Chaos Bolt or my Incinerate kind of going off in different directions. So I was pleasantly surprised um, just by how often this did actually proc for being 35%. So which seems about right. So um, if you wanted a simpler build, as I did, I would go with this. I always ended up having Havoc, and then I never used it, or I never used it at the right time, or something like that. So just leaving it up to chance for me is just perfectly fine right now. If I do Mythic Plus or something in Season 3, um, I might look at this again and take this, because it'll be more of a Mythic Plus dungeon is a more of a controlled kind of thing. So, and then from there, so I'm going to skip over Immortal 8. This is about your most basic ability. It doesn't really react with all that much. It's just a dot. Um, and then Conflagrate. The only thing I'll say with this is improve Conflagrate gives you an additional charge. If you play Mage, um, Fire Blast, Phoenix Flames, um, you'll understand having an extra charge is beneficial. I would say go ahead and take it so you have 3. Other than that, you're just refreshing the dot for Immortal 8, and you're just using Conflagrate when it has a charge, basically. So, Conflagrate with 3 will generate you at least a Soul Shard. So these are good for openers. Um, and then I wanted to focus on Incinerate, Chaos Bolt, and Rain of Fire, because these are the 3 that you really use the most. So Incinerate, um, if we look at some of the talents here, so first thing, Fire and Brimstone. So this was the whole point and why I reset the talents in the first place. So this makes Incinerate basically an AoE ability. Um, hits all enemies near your target for 25% damage, which is still pretty good. Um, there will be a few occasions where either you don't have the soul shards for Rain of Fire, or um, it's uh, just not the best time to use it. So having Incinerate um, have more of an AoE effect definitely comes in useful. And when they put this in, which was a while ago, as I remember, or I didn't take it for some reason. Um, I remember first using this when we had the old talent where we had the rose, and it's quite a bit of a DPS boost as well. So if you're doing something like Mythic Plus or something where you need AoE, certainly rating, things like that, it's not too much of a disadvantage. Even 25% damage is more than enough. Um, and then there was something else I took. Yeah, okay, I already went over that. And yeah, so that might have been the only thing for Incinerate. There was one. Don't know if I mentioned. So Backdraft, Conflict Rate reduces the cast time of your next Incinerate, Chaos Bolt, or Soulfire by 30% max 2 charges. So, yeah, physical attacks against you have a 25% chance to make your next Incinerate instant cast. This effect cannot occur more than once every 6 seconds. So, um, it does keep proccing off of something um, every now and then, and I wasn't entirely sure what it was for sure, as odd as that sounds. Um, so I've narrowed it down to one of those two abilities. It's either Conflagrate or it's either physical attacks. Um, I want to say it's Backdraft because it's not an instant cast ability. Um, but I have had it proc as an instant cast ability, so I think these two are just kind of working just whenever they proc. I don't know if they're canceling each other out. Um, yeah, I really think Backlash is. I'm not sure. Like I'm kind of torn here. I'm not sure. Um, because I'll see it proc and it'll have a cast time, and then I'll see it proc and it'll be an instant cast. Both kind of when I was out doing stuff in the real world and um, or the open world, I should say, or like in dungeons. So I'm not 100% sure. Definitely both worth taking though, I would say. Um, and then for Chaos Bolt, and I may be repeating. Uh, did I not spell Chaos Bolt correctly? Chaos Bolt. There we go. Yeah, so went over Ritual of Ruin. Also took Master Ritualist, which reduces the cost down to 10. I think it was 15 or 20. Let me see. Oh, they're not finally. Yeah, so it's at least 15. Thought it was more than that. Um, let's see here. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was just Ritual of Ruin. I do get this to proc at pretty convenient times though. and it will not consume the if the passive triggers. It does not consume it if you are already in the process of casting Chaos Bolt. So you actually get a free Chaos Bolt in there somewhere. So instead of normally being able to use this 2, maybe 3 times, depending on if you have a Soul Shard that regenerates, you can actually use it, 3 or 4 times. So not not terrible. And then let me look at Rain of Fire. Yeah, there we go. Take increased damage. Yeah, I guess the soul fragments was most of it for. I thought there was more than that. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. So, as I said, this was going to be a more simplified overview. So, um, yeah. So rotation wise, um, just so this kind of makes more sense. Um, so as I said, Immortalate just to keep the dot up. Conflagrate whenever it has a charge. You don't have to wait for all 3 charges. I'll typically wait for 2 because I know 2 is a guaranteed soul shard. And then it's just spamming Incinerate and then just Chaos Bolt if it's a boss fight, or Rain of Fire if it's not, basically. And that is it. I don't really use. I have, for some reason, the only curses I ended up left with was Curse of Weakness. The others disappeared after I reset the um, talents. So, and then Drain Life. So I just kept those there just to remember I have them, basically. And then Unyielding Resolve. Kind of have a choice there. I'd definitely say, well, I take that back. Maybe it's your default ability. That just reduces the cooldown. So, yeah. So, definitely use it here and there. I don't typically use the damage reduction ability all that much. It seems like even on my healers, just once in a while. Um, that is it though. I was gonna show you the spellbook so you can see like there's nothing that I'm not using. It is a very simple build. So um, I don't have trouble generating soul shards. Um, my damage has kind of been all over the place. That could partially be gearing because my gear is just I've considered doing something with this. Kind of kept going back to this character during Shadowlands, so she had some gear, but it wasn't the best gear, and so I suspect um, once I get more appropriate gear, um, as I get to more max level, I should have some Forbidden Reach gear, some cloth gear. Um, that'll kind of level everything out, and then I imagine I'll do pretty decent damage. So that seems to be the main thing. Is I've been fairly consistent. Um, it's just been a little lower than what it feels like it should be. So I'm taking it that's the gear, which also often happens with characters when you are leveling them. So yeah. So if you figure out the soul shards, that seems to pretty well take care of most of your problem. Um, if I did have a complaint. It's that Incinerate cast time is a bit long when you're trying to spam it to take advantage of Fire and Brimstone. So, um, otherwise, as you saw, like everything kind of ties in quite nicely. Everything synergizes quite nicely. Um, again, like I said, the Warlock talents, the Destruction talents are some of the maybe some of the better, if not the best, talents in the game at the moment from what I've seen on other classes and specs. Like there were a few times you'll see if you watch when I reset the talents that I actually had to kind of stop and think about like what to take. Because it does give you a choice in what kind of a build you want to do. You still have Grimoire of Sacrifice, so if you don't want to have a demon out, which I haven't been, so that probably is not helping my DPS either. You can do that. There's a lot of things that deal with Shadow Burn. I didn't want to deal with this, anything like that. I mainly just wanted to stay with these abilities because I use all of these, so I didn't want to have something over here that I wasn't going to be using, um, next to everything else. Um, yeah, I did set this up a bit more with PvP in mind because that's typically what I've done most on this character. Um, I'm not ruling out doing Mythic Plus during Season 3. Um, during the next patch. So right now, I'm just going to level and then just kind of see what I feel like doing. At some point, I kind of wanted to switch over to Affliction because that'll probably be what I play in PvP. Um, so it had been a while since I'd done anything with Destruction, um, and for not playing it for a while, it was a simple spec to jump back into, I have to say. I kind of remembered what everything did. It's pretty straightforward. You have a little bit of everything. So you have a dot, you have an instant, um, an instant damage ability. You have Incinerate, which is kind of your spammable ability. You have Chaos Bolt, which is your harder hitting ability, and then you have AoE with Rain of Fire. So, and they're all really good at what they do. So it's a fairly balanced spec, which is what I said when I reset the talents. It's probably the simplest of the three Warlock specs to play. So, yeah. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. And if you're curious how I came to actually pick all the talents that I did for the Warlock talent and the Destruction talents, that will be part 2. Okay, so after some debate about if I wanted to really level another character at this point, um, I decided that I would kind of like to have my Warlock because I do different things with her. Um, Specifically more PvP kind of stuff. Kind of haven't done much PvP, so still kind of interested in doing Mythic Plus when Season 3 comes out. Um, Depending on what the mount is, though, I still would kind of like to maybe do something with PvP. So, with that being said, I decided to go ahead and level my Warlock, who was already level 60, so it's not much um, to level her to 70. So, um, time walking, different things are going on, so I have options, and then of course PvP. PvP before you get to level 70 isn't all that bad. It's kind of between like 68 and 70, somewhere in there. 65 maybe, and 70. Um, you can kind of go in and play around and have fun. It's kind of more of a toss up. So, um, I don't think I have set the talent. I haven't done much of anything on her in Dragonflight. So, and I did a time walking to get to 61 so I could use some of the crafted gear that I made, and realized that I didn't have like fire and brimstone and I wanted this. So that kind of led me to believe I hadn't really set any of this up, and then looking at some of the talents that were taken aren't talents that I would have normally taken. So I decided to go ahead and go through and just reset everything. Um, I haven't done much with destruction on this character. This was the second Warlock I started. The first one was a boosted tune from back in the day, and she had the Greenfire questline, so I refused to play destruction on this character until I had the green, the fail fire. So I got that like the end of Shadowlands, so I've just been in destruction, which is about the I don't know, the easiest, middle of the road. I like demonology. Affliction is really good for PvP. You kind of see Warlock is one of those classes where you kind of see all three specs played. There's not really kind of one over the other. Um, Destruction, I would say though, is probably the most simplest, more middle of the road to play. So demonology can be fun depending on what you're doing. You can set that up to do some interesting things, and then affliction is just dots. So you can do pretty well in PvP with that. So for the moment, I am just going to do destruction, I think, just to level. Um, so I want to start with the destruction talents first. So you get Chaos Bolt by default. Um, yes. Your spells have a chance to grant you haste. Chaos Bolt consumes up to 5 seconds of immortalates damage over time effect on your target, instantly dealing that much damage. I think the haste would actually be better. Ring of Fire, yes. Reduces the casting of Chaos Bolt, yes. Havoc could be good. Your single target spells have a 35% chance to apply Havoc to a nearby enemy for... I actually kind of like that better. Let's go with that. Havoc is really good. I just never... I'm not good with using it. So if Mayhem will do it for me, we'll try that. Enemies affected by your Ring of Fire take 5% increased damage from your fire spells. That's fine. Conflagrate increases your immortalate. Incinerate and damage. Okay. So that it has, yeah, so probably the additional charge. Reduces the cooldown of 2 seconds. Yes, that's fine. Channel Demon Fire. Don't think we need that. Increases the duration of Havoc by 3 seconds. Mayhem also Has an additional 10% chance to trigger. Okay, I like that. When Chaos Bolt damages a target affected by Havoc, it explodes, dealing damage to all enemies. Okay, so I think this is probably going to be better. Increases the duration. So I want Fire and Brimstone. So what's the best way to get there? Increase 20% has a 20% chance to grant Soul Fragment. So I've tried Cataclysm. Cataclysm doesn't work all that well, so I think Inferno is probably going to be better. Okay. Soulfire, burn the target, applying, okay. Shadow burn. Um, hmm. Do I want Shadow burn every time your spells duplicate from Havoc? Gain 1% additional, 1% increased damage for 6 seconds. Stacks up to 5 times. Increases your critical strike by 3%. Physical attacks against you have a 25% chance to make your next. Incinerate. Instant cast Incinerate is so kind of the so Immortalate is your damage over time. Conflagrate is your instant cast ability, and then Incinerate is your just kind of your spammable. This will generate your soul shards, so you can use Chaos Bolt, which is your big damage dealer. So, um, kind of leaning towards taking Shadow Burn. Well, it does consume a soul shard, though. Yeah, that's fine. When your Immortalate deals periodic damage to a target above 80%, gain 2% haste for 10 seconds, stacks up 3 times. That's pretty good, so. Especially if, so the haste is basically for Incinerate. And then with Fire and Brimstone, it's kind of an AoE ability, so it can be pretty good. Chaos Bolt and Shadow Burn increases the damage you deal to the target by 5%. Chaos Bolt, Shadow Burn, and Incinerate deal 5% increased damage. If target's affected by Immortalate. Chaos Bolt, Shadow Burn increase the damage you deal to the target by 5%, 10%. That's fine. Um, hmm. Well, I'm almost going to have. Wait. Oh, Immortalate. There we go. So I almost am going to have Immortalate on the target. Hmm. Well, 10% increased damage. That's probably fine. Summon Infernal. That would probably be good. Yeah. Increases your... Incinerate now. Generates 100% additional soul fragments. Yes. Every 15 soul shards spent grants Ritual of Ruin. Making your next Chaos Bolt Rain of Fire consume no soul shards. And have its cast time reduced by 50%. So that could be good. Summon Infernal increases the damage of your next 8 casts of Chaos Bolt by 25%, or your next 8 casts of Rain of Fire by 35%. Your Infernal's melee attacks cause its target to take 50% increased damage from its immolation. Which I don't think I'm using. Stacking up to 15 times. Consuming soul shards increases your mastery by 0.5% for 10 seconds. For each shard spent, granting a stack does not refresh the duration. Chaos Bolt increases the damage of your... Chaos Bolt increases the damage of Chaos Bolt by 12% and reduces the cast time by 10% per 5 seconds. And it only uses 2, and you have 5 soul shards, so you could use it back to back. Rain of Fire increases damage of Rain of Fire. Shadowburn increases damage of Shadowburn. Okay. Ritual of Ruin requires 3 less soul. So 10 instead of 5. Chaos Bolt and Rain of Fire increase the damage of your next 2 Disintegrate by 15%. Shadowburn increases the damage of your next Disintegrate by 15%. When Chaos Bolt or Rain of Fire consumes a charge of Ritual of Ruin, you summon a Blasphemy for 8 seconds. Twisting Nether, impacting for fire damage, stunning all enemies. Will serve for 8 seconds, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. And generates 1 soul shard fragment every 0.5 seconds. Okay. Interesting. So, still kind of restores 1 soul fragment and refunds a charge. The target dies within 5 seconds. I really like the rotation of destruction though, so I'm kind of hesitant to throw something else in there. Which is going back to what I said about Havoc. Like, I think that's one of the reasons why I never really used Havoc, because it has a fairly straightforward rotation. Like, you have a little bit of everything. You have damage over time, you have instant, you have single target, you know, you have your big damage dealers, you have some AoE. Like, I mean, it's a fairly balanced spec. And then my mastery increases damage Your spells deal increased damage plus a random amount up to whatever percentage your mastery is. An additional damage, additional increased damage. Yeah, so couldn't remember if it was just fail damage or just damage overall. So I have one more point to spend at this stage. Blasphemy could be good. Summon Infernal increases the damage of your next 8. Cast Chaos Bolt. Next 8 casts a Fire Rain. Your Infernal's melee attack causes its damage to take 3% increased damage from Immolation. Okay. Okay, so I already went over all these. So yeah, I guess we'll just go with that for now. That's fine. Okay, so now for the Warlock Talents. So you get Demonic Circle by default. Your next Imp, Wordwalker, Incubus, has its cast time reduced. That's not actually all that helpful. Burning Rush increases movement speed at the cost of your health. Again, not like super helpful. Your Soul Leech absorption now passively recharges at a rate of 0.4% your maximum health every 1 second. That is actually pretty good. When Soul Leech absorbs damage, 5% of damage taken is absorbed and spread out over 5 seconds. Reduces damage taken by 1.5%. Okay. The shields for Warlock are generally pretty good, so I never actually use any of these curses, which probably makes me a horrible take that for PvP. Probably makes me a horrible Warlock. Using Demonic Circle, Teleport, or your Demonic Gateway reduces all damage you take by 8% for 10 seconds. Increases your attack speed of your primary pet by 5%. Increases Grimoire of Sacrifice, which I did not take. It sacrifices your pet. It's basically like Lone Wolf for hunters. You don't have a pet, but you do more damage, essentially. Increases Grimoire of Sacrifice by 10%. Attack speed. Increases damage done by your primary pet. Oh, that's weird. I might as well just go ahead and take both of those. Increases you and your pet's maximum health by 5%. Yes, that's fine. Banish, don't really need. Drain life heals for 15% amount. Don't really ever use it. Your Hearthstone heals you for an additional 10% of your maximum health. Any part of your raid member using Hearthstone also heals you for that amount. Oh, that is nice. I like that. Increases the amount of damage required to break your fear by an additional 60%. Your fear causes the target to tremble in place instead of fleeing in fear. Now, as far as finding the one that's more beneficial here, you have to stop and think in like how good are you with actually being able to fear someone? Because in PvP, I don't use it all that much, and then diminishing returns kick in. Strikes fear in the target, disorients them. Damage may cancel the effect. So really, I think, yeah, I don't know that the trembling in place so much is beneficial. The amount of damage required to break your fear effects by, I think that's probably more beneficial. Because if you're targeting them anyway, between two locations, yes. Dark Pack I don't necessarily think I need. So Unending Resolve is your like your damage reduction. So reduce all damage taken by 25%, granting immunity to interrupt silence, and pushback effects for 8 seconds. So reduces damage taken by an additional 15%. Reduces the cooldown by 45 seconds. So this is kind of a situational ability. So I feel like so 15 would be, so 40. So I feel like that has more benefit than probably the cooldown. For me, this is kind of one you can kind of pick and choose depending on how often you use it. Do I have? I do. I also took Howl of Terror, so I mean, 2 CCs aren't bad, especially if I think I'm going to be doing PvP later. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and take the increase in damage to those two. It's kind of like fear, though. Like, how often do I actually get to use this? It is a target on location ability, I believe. So it doesn't just yeah, it doesn't just affect like players around you. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and grab it. I mean, I need 3 more anyway to get to the next tier here. So reduces the cooldown by 15 per second, increases the radius by 2 yards. Slows enemies in a 12-yard cone in front of you for 70% for 6 seconds. I kind of like that. That's kind of like Dragon's Breath. I think it is that Mage has. Fire Mage used to have. Hmm. So, how much does slowing actually help? Like, in a PvP situation, for example, chances are, if they're in front of you, they're attacking you. So, slowing them really doesn't do very much unless I have my like demonic circle somewhere and I can get away. Um, Stunning them also. Stunning them. This is. So I probably should have mentioned. Shadow Fury is probably better in a group situation. Like if you're kind of behind melee and you're like fighting over uh, a base in like a Rothi Basin. Whereas like Howl of Terror can be used in any situation. 10 yard range, like that's most players around you. So you kind of have a chance to get away. 20 seconds damage um, may cancel its effect. So depending on how many people you have stunned and everything, if you're focusing on one or two players, that you're going to get the full 20 seconds on the rest of the players, whoever else is affected. Um, but if you try to cast this when someone is attacking you, most likely they'll interrupt you, or they'll end up killing you before you can finish casting it. So while I like if it was reduced cast time, I think this might be better. I do like the radius, the increase to radius though, because that would make it 10 yards. I'm thinking Shadow Flame though has more of a benefit. Uh, yeah, yeah, and I just kind of like that. Kind of want to play with that and see. Um, when you use a Hellstone, gain 10%. Okay, I like that. 10% of all damage taken by your pet instead. Will Grimoire Sacrifice is active. Your stamina is increased by. Okay. Um, Soul Leech also heals you for 50% and your pet for 50% of the damage absorbed. So let's go back here. Um, yeah, so Soul Leech. All single target damage done by you and your minions grants you and your pet shadowy shields that absorb 3% of all damage dealt, up to 50% of maximum health. And then what was the other one? There was another one, wasn't there? Soul Leech. Soul Leech. No? No, I guess just healing and absorption. So, yeah. I am fine with that. Where was I here? So, your primary pet gains a bonus effect. Successful sting magic casts. Grant the target 4% damage reduction. Reduces the cooldown of Shadow Bulwark by 30 seconds. Reduces the cooldown of Devour Magic by 5 seconds. Reduces the cooldown of Seduction by 10 seconds and causes the target to walk faster towards the demon. Well, outside of Fail Hunter and my Succubus, I don't really use I don't use the amp. I don't know anyone that does use the amp outside of leveling. Um, Voidwalker typically doesn't come in useful for like end game stuff typically. that I do, unfortunately. Um, so attacks received that deal at least 5% of your health. Decrease unending resolves cooldown by 10 seconds. Cannot occur more than once every 25 seconds. Damage done to you by you or your demon has a chance to grant the other one 5% increased damage for 15 seconds. When your health drops below 35%, the percentage of damage shared via your soul link is increased by an additional 5%. While Grimoire Sacrifice is active, your stamina is increased by 3%. Every soul shard spent has a 5% chance to be refunded. So that's probably pretty good. Um, and then your spells and abilities have a chance to summon an Inquisitor's Eye that deals Shadow Flame damage every 9 seconds. 0.9 seconds for 12.9 seconds. I like how they kind of evened it out to a 0.9 seconds. 12.9 seconds. They could have just done 12 seconds. So somewhere, I'm sure if you sat down and figured this out, um, it would even out to about uh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of math to do there. Um, Summons a soul keeper that consumes all tormented souls you've collected. Blasting nearby enemies for chaos damage per soul consumed. Over 8 seconds deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets, and only one soul keeper can be active at a time. You collect tormented souls from each target you kill, and occasionally escaped souls you previously collected. Okay, that's interesting. And then consumes one soul shard, unlocking the hidden power of your spells, so increases the movement speed by 50% and makes you immune to snare and root effects when you use Demonic Circle. Can be cast instantly when you use Demonic Gateway. Gain an absorption shield equal to the amount of healing done for 30 seconds. The shield cannot exceed 30% of your maximum health when you use Drain Life. Restores 140% more health and reduces the damage taken by your pet by 30% for 10 seconds. When you use Health Funnel, which I never do because it heals your demon. And for one reason or another, I just never seem to use it. Increase the healing of your Health Stone by 30% and increases your maximum health by 20% for 12 seconds when you use your Health Stone. Okay. I'm never going to remember all that. So, the teleporter's kind of beneficial. The demonic gateway really isn't. I don't use Drain Life. I don't use Health Funnel. So, 3 of the 5 abilities don't really apply. The Health Stone is beneficial. So is it worth taking for 2 of the 5 abilities? Um, well, that kind of depends on what else. That deals damage. Hmm. I kind of like this idea. Um, damage done by you or your demon has a chance to grant the other one 10% increased damage for 15 seconds. That's actually not bad. So, yeah. So those were actually really, really good talents. Like I actually had to think about some of those. So, actually kind of impressed. That there, that there. Put this back over here. And then I wanted to see just to make sure. Yeah, so see that's a target on location ability. So that's more of a group situation. Whereas Howl of Terror is just more at your location. So I have learned with Priest and Psychic Scream that it helps to have some kind of an AoE that you can just get. Um, if anyone is on you, attacking you, you can just get them off. So Warlocks do and don't have much in the way of movement. Like if we can set things up, like in the right battleground, Demonic Circle works really well. Um, outside of that, though, if there's a lot of movement going on, not not so much. So yeah, so I will level with these at some point. I kind of want to set up um, Affliction, so I don't know that I'll play Destruction completely to level 70. I might switch over to Affliction at some point just to dust off the cobwebs so I can remember how to do everything. See what has changed with the spec and the abilities and everything. So yeah, so there you go. Not too bad. I kind of liked both the Warlock and the Destruction talents. So yeah, so there you go. Hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching.